When I called my son Daniel to ask about his wedding plans, my daughter-in-law Claire locked eyes with me and said with a razor-sharp smile, "Oh, we got married last weekend. It was just for close family." Those words landed like a punch to the gut. Close family. I, who had spent years covering their $600 monthly rent, furnishing their apartment from my own savings, and even buying their groceries when their fridge was empty, was not close family. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal like I did, please subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories like mine. You're not alone. I stood frozen in my living room, the phone heavy in my hand, staring at the oak coffee table I'd bought them 2 years ago. The pale blue dress I'd chosen for the wedding, costing me $250 at Nordstrom on April 12, 2023, hung unused in my closet, next to the dreams I'd woven about standing beside my only son on his big day. Daniel avoided my gaze, fiddling with his phone, while Claire lounged on the couch, her smugness filling the air like the faint lavender scent from the candle I'd lit. For weeks, I'd planned, saved, and imagined every detail, when $200 set aside for their wedding gift. I called to my cousin Laura in Seattle to share the joy. My house scrubbed spotless for a post-ceremony visit that would never happen. All of it crumbled under Claire's 4 venomous words. The betrayal wasn't just the exclusion. It was the lie. Daniel's weak explanation, "Mom, it was small, just us and a few witnesses," unraveled when I saw the photos on Instagram 3 days later, on October 20th, 2025. Claire's parents beaming beside the couple, her brother raising a glass of champagne, the white dress Claire wore, partly funded by the $900 I'd sent her for wedding expenses on September 15, 2025. I wasn't supposed to see those photos, but I did. They burned into me, each one a reminder of my invisibility. A week later, Claire called, her voice no longer smug but trembling with urgency. "Elaine, we're behind on rent. The landlord's threatening to evict us by Friday if we don't pay $200. Can you help?" I could hear her pacing, the same way she did when she needed something. For years, I'd dropped everything, canceled my book club, skipped my annual trip to the coast to make those transfers. I'd eaten canned soup for weeks to afford their car repairs. And now, after they'd shut me out of their wedding, they called as if I owed them. "Claire," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "didn't I tell you I only help those who value me?" The silence on the line was deafening. For once, I wasn't the one trembling. "Elaine, what are you talking about?" She stammered. "You've always been there for us. You're like family." Lies dripping with that honeyed tone she used when she wanted something. Money for the dress, the honeymoon, the $500 ring I'd helped pay for, never knowing I'd be excluded from the day it was worn. For 3 years, I'd walked a tightrope, measuring every word, every dollar, hoping for a scrap of love from my son. I'd been the perfect mother, the generous mother-in-law, the silent bank who never complained when they treated me like an afterthought. But close family broke something in me. I did the math that night. $600 rent for 36 months was $21,600. Groceries, $250 a month. Another $9,000. Gifts for birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, 3-bag car repairs, $800. Furniture, $2,200. The total? $3,100 drained from my late husband George's life insurance, my pension, my savings. All to be left out of their lives. The tears came that night, not of sadness, but of rage. I cried for the years I'd let them make me feel like my love was a burden, my presence an inconvenience, my money their only interest. I cried for the woman I'd become, someone who thought love could be bought with bank transfers. But when I woke the next morning, October 22, 2025, something had shifted. I looked in the mirror, saw the same gray eyes, the same lines etched from years of giving too much. But there was a new fire in my gaze, a resolve I hadn't felt since George died. I made coffee, the familiar ritual grounding me. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone for Daniel's texts or worry about their bills. I sat at my kitchen table, where I'd spent countless hours budgeting their expenses, and pulled out my bank statements. The numbers stared back, $100 gone. I wasn't just angry at them, I was angry at myself for enabling it. The phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. My heart used to leap at his calls, hoping for an apology, a connection. This time, I let it ring out. Then Claire called. I ignored that too. A text followed. Mom, we need to talk, please. I deleted it and sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. By noon, I was out walking, something I hadn't done for myself in months. Usually, my outings were errands for them, bank runs, grocery trips, pharmacy visits. Today, I walked through the park where I'd pushed Daniel on swings as a boy. He'd called me the best mom ever back then. When had that boy become a man who saw me as a cash machine? At the bank, I met Mrs. Carter, the manager who'd processed my transfers for years. Elaine, good to see you, she said warmly. Another transfer for Daniel? I shook my head. Not today, Mrs. Carter. I'm here to cancel all automatic transfers and lock my accounts. No one else gets access. Her eyes widened. She'd seen my account dwindle from $50,000 to $12,000 since 2022. Are you sure? She asked. I've never been surer, I replied. As she processed the changes, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Daniel, Claire, Daniel again. I turned it off. Mrs. Carter handed me the paperwork and said softly, I've seen you give so much, Elaine. I hope you're doing this for you. I smiled. I am. When I got home, I found 2 cars in my driveway, Daniel's beat-up sedan and Claire's new SUV, which I'd helped finance with a $2,000 loan in March 2024. My stomach churned. I'd given them keys years ago, thinking family meant trust. Through the window, I saw movement in my living room. My blood ran cold. They were inside, uninvited. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Daniel sat on my couch, head down. Claire paced, her heels clicking on the hardwood I'd paid to refinish. A stranger in a suit stood by my dining table, flipping through my private papers, bank statements, my will, my tax returns. What's going on here? I demanded, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Claire spun around, her face a mix of panic and fake concern. Elaine, thank God you're here. We were so worried. The man stepped forward. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Mr. Reynolds, a family attorney. Your son and daughter-in-law are concerned about your well-being. My well-being? I repeated, stepping toward the table and snatching my papers from his hands. You're in my house, touching my things without permission, and you're worried about me. Daniel looked up, his face a mask of guilt. Mom, you canceled the transfers. The bank said you blocked us. We don't understand why you're acting like this. Claire chimed in, her voice syrupy. Elaine, we think you're not yourself. Maybe the stress is too much. At your age, it's normal to get confused. That word, confused, lit a fuse in me. I saw their plan. Paint me as a senile old woman to seize my money. I'm not confused, I said, my voice like steel. I'm done being used. Get out of my house, now. Mr. Reynolds raised his hands, all false calm. Mrs. Thompson, your family has a right to ensure your financial decisions are sound. They've documented erratic behavior, cutting off support, ignoring calls. Claire nodded, crocodile tears in her eyes. We just want what's best for you. Best for me? I laughed, bitter and raw. You mean best for your bank account? You said I wasn't close family, Claire. Now you're worried about my well-being. Daniel stood, his voice pleading. Mom, we messed up with the wedding. It was a mistake. Let us fix it. But Claire's next words betrayed their true intent. Elaine, you've always supported us. Everything you have will be ours someday. We're just trying to help manage it. There it was, the truth. They saw me as a walking inheritance, already half dead. Out, I said, pointing to the door. All of you. Claire's tears turned to anger. You can't do this, Elaine. We have bills you co-signed. We trusted you. Trusted my money, I corrected, not me. Get out. They left. Mr. Reynolds muttering about legal options. Daniel avoiding my eyes. Claire glaring like I'd stolen something from her. As the door closed, the silence was glorious. For the first time, I felt free. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear but from adrenaline. I was done being their doormat. At 7 a.m., I called Miss Larson, a lawyer I'd met when settling George's estate in 2018. Elaine, what they did, entering your home, rifling through your papers, is elder financial abuse, she said. We need to document everything, every payment, every manipulation. We spent hours tallying the 38th of $100 I'd given them, pulling bank records from my account at First National. Transaction IDs like 39924 for $600 on July 10th, 2023. This could have funded your retirement dreams, Miss Larson said, shaking her head. Instead, it went to people who excluded you from their wedding. Next, I went to the hardware store. Mr. Hayes, the owner, greeted me. Elaine, another fix for Daniel's place? No, I said. New locks for my house? Top quality. His son, Tom, offered to install a security system. Cameras, motion sensors, the works, he said. Wait 100 installed by tomorrow. I didn't hesitate. Do it. That afternoon, Claire called from a new number. Elaine, we want to make this right. Let's have a family dinner. Celebrate the wedding together. I cut through her lies. How much do you owe this time, Claire? Silence. Then $200 for rent. But it's not just about that. We miss you. Do you miss me or my money? I asked, more silence. I'm done, Claire. You made your choice when you left me out. Now I'm making mine. I hung up and felt lighter than I had in years. I treated myself to a salon visit, something I hadn't done since February 2024, always prioritizing their needs over mine. My stylist Jenny grinned. Elaine, you look different today, lighter. I am, I said. I'm done carrying other people's weight. As she cut my hair, we talked about her life, her kids, her dreams, not Daniel, not Claire. It was the first real conversation I'd had in months. You look radiant, Jenny said when she finished. Not just the hair, you. When I got home, a woman sat on my porch. Mrs. Thompson? I'm Susan Miller, your neighbor. I heard shouting yesterday and got worried. Her kindness floored me. A stranger cared more than my own son. I invited her in, poured coffee, and told her everything. Susan listened, her eyes soft with understanding. I went through this with my son, she said. He only called when he needed money. Cutting him off was the hardest thing I ever did, but it saved me. Her story gave me hope. Will Daniel ever change? I asked. Maybe, she said. But that's not your burden anymore. Live for you now. The next morning, Tom installed the locks and cameras. My phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Claire, desperate, using friends' phones. I ignored them. Susan invited me to her book club that evening. I met 5 women, all in their 60s and 70s, who'd faced similar betrayals. I gave my daughter $15,000 over 2 years, one said. She stopped calling when I stopped paying. Their stories mirrored mine, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Days later, I visited George's grave, something I'd avoided because their emergencies always took precedence. I sat by his headstone, the grass cool under my hands. George, I lost myself after you died. I thought I could buy Daniel's love, like I was making up for you being gone. I was wrong. The breeze felt like his answer, gentle and forgiving. I cleaned the stone, laid fresh lilies, and promised to live for myself. But the fight wasn't over. A week later, on October 30th, 2025, I found 3 cars outside my house again. Daniel's, Claire's, and an unfamiliar one. The cameras showed them inside with another stranger. My heart raced, but I stayed in my car and called Miss Larson. Stay put, she said. I'm calling the police. Minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived with Miss Larson. The officers escorted Daniel, Claire, and a man in a suit out. Ma'am, they're leaving, an officer said. You're safe, Claire shouted from the street. Elaine, you owe us. We trusted you to pay our bills. Daniel added, you're abandoning your family. I stepped forward. Family doesn't sneak into my house or call me crazy for saying no. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Miss Larson filed for a temporary restraining order that day, citing their unauthorized entry on October 30th, 2025. This strengthens our case, she said. They're desperate. That night, Susan and her book club friends came over, bringing wine and stories. You're not alone, Elaine, Susan said. We've got your back. Their support felt like armor. 2 weeks later, on November 14th, 2025, a woman knocked on my door. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Miss Bennett from Senior Services. We received a report about your well-being. My stomach dropped. They'd escalated to the government. I let her in, but called Miss Larson. When she arrived, Miss Bennett explained, we've had reports of erratic behavior, canceled payments, paranoia with cameras, refusing family help. Miss Larson cut in. Those payments were $3,800 over 3 years, bled from my client's savings. The cameras were for protection after they broke in. Here's the police report, 45892, dated October 30th, 2025. I added, I stopped paying because they used me. Miss Bennett, I'm clear for the first time in years. Miss Bennett reviewed the documents, her face softening. Mrs. Thompson, do you manage your own life? Yes, I said. My bills are paid, my house is clean, I drive, I have friends. I'm healthy, no prescriptions, just vitamins. Ms. Larson added, she's had a full medical eval on November 10th, 2025, perfectly competent. Ms. Bennett closed her folder. I see no need for intervention. This case is closed. But they didn't stop. On December 5th, 2025, Ms. Larson called. They filed a lawsuit for mental incompetence, requesting guardianship. My heart sank. My own son wanted to strip my autonomy. They claim unpaid bills and erratic behavior, she said. They have 3 witnesses, Claire, a neighbor, Mr. Walsh, and your pharmacist, Mr. Lee. I visited Mr. Lee that day. Elaine, Claire asked about my medications, he said, flustered. I told her you only buy vitamins, but she got me to sign a statement saying it was irregular. I thought it was for insurance. I had him write a retraction. Mr. Walsh, a grumpy neighbor, had signed a statement based on seeing my new cameras and friends, calling it paranoid. His bias was clear. He'd never liked me. Miss Larson arranged a psychiatric eval with Dr. Patel on December 10th, 2025. Your cognitive function is exceptional. Elaine, she said after 2 hours of tests, this lawsuit is textbook elder abuse. Susan's book club rallied, offering to testify about my clarity and strength. You're not alone, they said. We'll fight with you. The trial came on January 15th, 2026. I wore a navy suit, my hands steady. Miss Larson reminded me, they have to prove you're incompetent. We just show you're not. In court, I saw Daniel and Claire, their faces hard. Their lawyer, Mr. Grant, painted me as a confused woman manipulated by new friends. Claire testified, tears streaming. Elaine's like a mother to me. Her changes break my heart. Miss Larson dismantled her. When did you last call my client without asking for money? Claire faltered. I don't recall. Was it you who said she wasn't close family? Claire's silence was damning. Daniel testified, Mom's irrational, cutting us off. Miss Larson fired back. You received $38 to $100 over 3 years. Is it irrational for her to stop? He had no answer. Mr. Walsh rambled about my strange cameras, but admitted he'd never spoken to me. Mr. Lee clarified his statement was manipulated. Dr. Patel testified to my competence, backed by test results. My friends, Susan, Jenny, and others spoke of my vitality. I took the stand, recounting every dollar, every betrayal, my voice unwavering. I stopped because I realized I was buying an illusion of love, I said. I'm not confused. I'm free. The judge deliberated for an hour. Mrs. Elaine Thompson is fully competent, he ruled. This lawsuit appears financially motivated. Guardianship is denied. Relief flooded me. Outside, Claire glared, but Daniel's eyes held a flicker of shame. I didn't care. I was done. That night, Susan hosted a celebration. You didn't just win a case, she said. You won your life. I moved to a condo downtown in March 2026, donating $10,000 to elder abuse charities. I took painting classes, traveled to Italy, and volunteered at a women's shelter. Daniel and Claire faded from my life, forced to face their own consequences. Some nights, On my balcony under the stars, I think of the woman I was. Scared, used, invisible. She's gone. In her place is someone who knows love can't be bought and freedom is worth everything. My name is Elaine, I'm 64, and I've learned to love myself first. If my story resonates, share your own in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you believe in reclaiming your life, subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine.